is not working well at all. I'm gonna have to pretend. Okay, what we are going to end up with when I slice it that way and we look back this way, it ends up being like a donut or a bagel, okay? When we slice, because picture this, the whole way around the outside, and then it goes down in the middle. When I slice it this way, I'm going to have a hole in the middle. If we have a hole in the middle, then we are going to use the washer method. Disc means there is no hole when you slice it perpendicular to your axis of revolution. Washer method we use if there is a hole. And we're going to use kind of the idea we did from two different functions. So if we have the washer method, it's still going to be pi, and it's still going to be either a to b or x values or y values, but it's going to be, you're going to see capital R of x squared minus lowercase r of x squared. I'm going to say x's or y's depending on if it's the function is in terms of x. Let's just do in terms of x right now. Swap them for y's if it's a vertical axis of revolution. The capital R of x is the outer radius. Lowercase r of x is the inner radius. So for this particular problem, find your axis of symmetry. First thing I notice, I have a vertical axis of symmetry. So I'm saying, okay, and I look at it and identify the fact that if I slice this perpendicular to my axis of symmetry, I do have a hole. So first thing I'm doing is I'm going like this, and I know that I'm going my outer radius squared minus my inner radius squared, and actually I shouldn't even write, let's just do big R and little r. I'm not even going to write the x's or the y's. And then we have to decide, is this going to be in terms of x or in terms of y? Since this one was a vertical axis of revolution, these are going to be in terms of y, so I'm going to have to write dy there. Now, I should be able to write my bounds if I know I'm going in terms of y's. What was my lowest y? What was my highest y? My lowest y was a 0, and my highest y was a 2. So my bounds are 0 to 2. My outer radius is the distance from my axis of revolution to the far outside of my shape. So when I cut there, that's actually going to be a consistent 4. So my outer radius is 4 squared minus my inner radius is how wide is my hole. And so my inner radius is actually the distance between the y-axis and this function. But since this is in terms of y, I need to write the function in terms of y. So solving for y, if I squared both sides of this, I would have x equals y squared. And so my function in terms of y, the inner radius itself was y squared. But then I also, to find the volume of that, I also need to square that. And again on these, I'm going to go through setups, but not actually solving afterwards. I'm much more worried about you being able to set these up correctly. Same scenario. We're actually going to revolve it around 2 other lines just to see what happens. Let's revolve this now around the line x equals 4. So this time, the axis again. This time I'm going to revolve it around x equals 4. So it's still a vertical axis of revolution. So right off the bat, vertical axis of revolution, I know that I am going to have to write this in terms of y. So we've got pi, and then I'm going to go dy. In terms of y's, we said we were going from 0 to 2, so this is 0 to 2. Now picture this time, if we're revolving this around this line, my shaded region is touching it. There's no hole. So in this case, again, it's going to be just the disc method, so the outer radius, or just the radius squared. Tricky though, in that what is the radius? If you are not revolving around the x or the y axis, be really cautious with this, because this is where people most likely are going to make mistakes. My radius, it goes from my axis of revolution to the edge of my function. And so what you want to remember is, think about the last problem we did where I was revolving around here. I did the outer radius minus the inner radius. This time, I want to get this distance. Well, I know that this whole distance is 4. I know that this distance right here, remember your function distance is always the distance back to your x or your y axis. I know that this distance was y squared. So if the whole thing is 4 and this distance is y squared, if I go 4 minus y squared, 4 minus y squared, that'll give me this distance, which is the width at any given point, at any given slice of my shaded region. So we would go 4 minus y squared. And last but not least, we can do this same one, but instead of revolving it around x equals 4, let's revolve it around x equals 6. Okay, so this time, got that edge there, but if I go over 2 more and I want to revolve it around this line, again, it's a vertical line, and vertical line, so I know I am in terms of y, so dy. I think maybe on the last one I forgot to write down, but it's the same on this one, that we're going the y values 0 to 2. Now, can you clearly see that when you revolve this around the squiggly line I drew at 6, that we're going to have a hole? So I probably should have even written this over here further. So we're going to have an outer radius that we need to square minus an inner radius that we need to square. My outer radius, because we're always going the distance from the outside of my shape to my axis of revolution. So I want to go from here to here is my R value. We know that the little distance over here is the y squared distance. We know the whole distance from axis of revolution back to the y-axis was 6. So we're going to go the whole distance minus that little y squared distance to give me the outer radius of my shape. Inner radius of my shape, kind of interesting on this one, is the distance from here to here, and that is a consistent 2, no matter where I make a slice, because it's between 4 and 6. So it's going to be 2 squared. And then we could solve from there, but again, most of these I'm just going to have you set them up, and that's the important part to be able to do. I understand that these are tricky, and I fully anticipate questions on this, and that I'll probably have to do more explanation, or we can try to Google Hangout or do something so that I can answer your questions and kind of see where, if anywhere, that you guys are running into problems with it. But hopefully this was a starting point and a little bit easier than to try to read it out of your book, and we'll go from there. See ya!